let's queer up out South Florida. Smart Ride teams and beneficiaries refuse to call it quits. The end of the Smart Ride isn't just the end of an era. It's the start of a new chapter for the people who made the ride so iconic. Since I broke the news of the decision to end the event, the Smart Ride community has wondered, what now? Spoiler alert, riding off into the sunset is not an option. Compass is a Smart Ride beneficiary and Palm Beach County's go-to resource for LGBTQ+. They received more than $142,000 from the last ride, a funding gap that's not easily made up. Their Smart Ride money has paid for everything from utility bills to life-saving surgeries. Compass CEO Julie Seaver told me, quote, "We all have the capacity to sustain or increase our events. We absolutely intend to carry on the spirit of the Smart Ride with us in continuing our fundraising efforts to help those in need," end quote. Meanwhile, one of the ride's most prolific, long-running fundraising teams, the Key West Mile Markers, has filed incorporation papers and pledged to keep raising money. Indeed, the leaders of the ride say over 20 years they've given people the tools to raise money without the Smart Ride umbrella. But organizers took care of sponsorship, so all the money raised by riders, 100%, went back to the communities. Will the new iterations be as effective? We'll see, but kudos to them for trying. You can read more of my exclusive coverage at outsfl.com now and on stands starting Thursday. And that's the question, because, I mean, yes, these groups have put together fundraisers over the years. Some of them are incredibly fun. Mm-hmm. They're all incredibly fun. I haven't been to one that hasn't yet. But the Smart Ride organizers, Glenn and his fabulous team, they do all the dirty work. They go out, they get the sponsors who pay for
the housing,
for some of the housing
like
and the security, police protection as we go down the thing. I don't know if they'll be able to do this or at least be able to do 100% like Smart Ride did, because now they're going to have to pick up the overhead costs. But they have put together wonderful organizations or wonderful fundraisers. Like I said, talking with Julie at Compass gave me hope, gave me a little bit of good vibes. She and her team do great works, and I just want to say personally, I appreciate you.
So, John, you've spoken to everybody involved at this point when it comes to this, okay? I hear rumors of like people saying stuff like, can't another organization just come and take it over? Like, is that even a possibility to do that now? Or is it that they want to leave it with the beneficiaries and walk away?
It is possible.
Okay.
The president of the board, of Smart Ride's board, told me that it was possible to keep it going, but they decided that this was the best option. They said they don't want to do a lesser iteration of the ride and giving it to someone else who hasn't, been there or, has this kind of organization.
It's 20 years, John.
It's 20 years. And it's one of those things where I think you and Al and I have said this last week. We said, the ride is Friday and Saturday. You drive back from Key West on Sunday, and then the organizers start putting it together on Monday. It's a lot, and they didn't want to hand it off to someone who doesn't understand, who just understands the money of it. That's so much more.
One thing that I want to make sure, and I know a substantial number of people watched the interview that I did with Glenn Weinzimmer and Todd Delmay, and I just want to draw back attention to something that was discussed extensively in that interview. Glenn Weinzimmer almost dies. He was within, doctor said,
they gave him 10 days.
Yeah,
Ow.
10 days in 1993 of full-blown AIDS. And he survived that, and they continued giving him a couple of years. And he stabilized through the process. In 2003, he participated in Clear Channel's AIDS ride. Mm-hmm. That was the precursor of what Glenn did in helping to become the founder of Smart Ride. But he tells the story that the reason why he was so motivated to work on the creation of Smart Ride and the way Smart Ride worked is because of what he watched in LGBT fundraising. And just saying LGBT, nonprofit, charity fundraising does not necessarily mean LGBT, nonprofit, and charity fundraising. And he illustrates a story that to no fault, he wagged a finger, I think, at everyone involved in that that fundraising event raised $1 million and only $60,000 went to beneficiaries. And he makes the challenge of, wait, all of this money is being raised, but it's really not going where it needs to go. And hence, that is how SmartRide forms. How it forms in 100% give back, and any expenses are outside of the donation process of SmartRide. That it will be almost impossible to repeat. Almost impossible to repeat, because the board and Glenn Weinzimmer's commitment to that model requires a tremendous fortitude that likely is not going to be repeated. So a ride could happen, but how much of the money is going to go back to beneficiaries, and how the beneficiaries share it, and how riding teams get contributed in their fundraising. This is way more complicated, to your question, than can't somebody else do it?
Yeah.
Well, probably not, to be honest with you, and that's what Glenn explains, and you know, that makes sense to me.
And then, also buy-in, the 20 years, folks have really came together and bought into that mission, knowing where all the money goes. So people really go all out. Like, I know friends who fundraise and they do their own special events to help raise money for SmartRide. I know people who go die hard. The motorcycle group who does help with security, like, they believe in where it's going to happen. And so if you don't have that buy-in and that transparency of here's the reason why.
Transparency,
of how we can truly, where this money goes, the buy-in may not be there, and so it cannot be duplicated. It cannot be, maybe another variation, but they have to have that true transparency, true buy-in.
I completely agree with that observation. One of the things, we're all hearing the rumors and conversation going on behind the scenes. I draw back to that interview with Glenn that was very powerful to me. His story was very powerful. But the other thing that was very powerful is to say, the major events that go into the fundraising will continue on. He gave the example in Tampa Bay of one of the big events. John tells the Key West Club team, those fundraisers are going to continue, and 100% of what they do will go to them, because those kind of events will continue on. I hear rumors, for example, behind the scenes, well, let's continue with SmartRide, but it won't go to Key West anymore. Well, if it doesn't go to Key West, it fundamentally changes what SmartRide is all about. So you can't do that, because then you're no longer SmartRide. And if somebody wants to do a bike fundraiser, they can do that now. They don't need SmartRide to do that.
No.
So go ahead and do that. I think it's too early for us to conclude. I think John's doing a good job in what he is pursuing, but it's too early to see and say what is next. And one last thought that I hope we will continue, our whole community will stay focused on. There is a goal for November 17th and 18th to raise $2 million. If they raise $2 million, it is the most successful event, I think, ever in the history of South Florida, from a grassroots, 100% donation organization and fundraising. I hope we will get through November 18th, and then whatever else happens on November 19th, we can start to quarterback at that moment. But that $2 million goal, our entire community should get behind, I think.
And one last thing, Glenn Weinzimmer will be on the FayWhat show Monday morning at 9 a.m. So make sure that you tune in and watch that. Okay?
Wait, I got to ask you about that in terms of plug. I heard that Glenn's going to come to your show, and he's going to describe the kind of dress or something, because somebody was telling me.
He asked me if he could bring his CPAP machine because he can't live without it. And I said, of course, bring it, Poppy. I don't want you to die in bed with me. Can you imagine Glenn Weinzimmer, founder of the SmartRide, dies in bed with lesbian FayWhat? Yeah. No!
Yeah. I think that would make great headlines for the FayWhat show and for the SmartRide. So I'm all in for that.
You get $4 million for that alone.
Folks, tune in Monday, all right?
Monday.
Okay.